The Battle of Britain is about to begin.
1940, the Nazis launched the greatest aerial offensive ever seen.
So the Germans came again, so we fought them again. No question.
Nothing romantic about it. It's a job of work. If you don't do it well, you're dead.
The bravest people were the ones who were terrified.
Finest Hour continues tomorrow, 9:30 on BBC One.
He's gone to Birmingham. No, be careful. Be careful.
Driving in fog is dangerous.
I can't see anything.
So switch on your headlights. Slow down and keep a safe distance. Headlights or fog lights must always be used in fog.
Be careful, Joe. Joe! Joe, don't go so fast.
That was a public information film.
They were the first of 2,000 people.
We're now down to 100 contestants
competing for a chance in the final.
Who's made it into the final five?
Michael, be gentle with them.
And an opportunity to win.
The whole of the year 2000 off work.
2,000 people start, only one person wins. The search continues. 2000 to 1, Saturday 6:40, BBC One.
Now on BBC One, Into the Night with BBC News 24.
This is BBC News 24, and at this stage, a warm welcome to viewers on BBC One who've just joined us. Prospects of a new agreement to open up international trade took a backward step when last week's World Trade Organization conference in Seattle ended in failure and recrimination. While violent demonstrations went on outside the meeting, those inside couldn't even agree a timetable for more talks. Our international business correspondent Peter Morgan reports on what the future holds for the new global economy.
100 yards behind the headlines. In Seattle, while politicians and protesters exchanged insults at the World Trade Talks, across the harbour, the real business of the USA was undisturbed. Commerce has helped make America the wealthiest nation of this century and placed it on the front line of the trade disputes that will dominate the century ahead. At the heart of the discontent that turned nasty in Seattle is concern that the world's wealth has been concentrated in too few hands. The sound and fury obscured the fact that many WTO delegates actually share the protesters' concern. The president of the World Bank believes unless wealth is distributed more equitably, the next century will be riven by war and mass migration.
We'll wake up 15 years from now, find another billion people, find that you've got another 10, 15, 20 wars, find that migration has grown dramatically. So political leadership may ignore it today, but most assuredly they will not be able to ignore it in the years ahead.
And there are seismic shifts of economic power in evidence. Nowhere more than in China, where the late Deng Xiaoping unleashed a wave of economic reform that is still gathering force. Tower blocks are rising where just recently paddy fields stood. In the next century, full integration into the world economy is the first priority of China's new breed of capitalist.
To raise a living standard of the Chinese people significantly, and in a relatively short period of time. That's what China wants. And we all know, okay, without reforms, without international competition, without integration of the Chinese economy into the world economy, China cannot achieve that goal.
And the world's next generation of wealth creators will have tools to make national borders irrelevant as data is passed instantly around the globe. The internet will not just revolutionize education, but how we work and spend our leisure time. Internet providers, who already number their customers in hundreds of millions, believe the historic significance of the new technology is only now emerging.
We just began. I mean, we see a glimpse of what this all could be, a new economy, a new rearranged personal life, new chances for job growth, in new areas which we don't realize.
In this century, Britain's traditional industries like shipbuilding and coal mining have collapsed and all but vanished. In their wake, new products have spawned new industries. They continue to do so in the computer age. In the 21st century, Britain will rely increasingly on its inventiveness and enterprise.
The 70s and the early 80s in Britain, which were perhaps slightly depressing time, where the word entrepreneurism was a bad word. That's all been swept away, and I think that Britain isn't as entrepreneurial a country almost as America.
So it is America that ends the 20th century commercially preeminent, while the benefits of new technology to the developing world are so far only marginal. In the next 100 years, resources of education and invention will become more important than those of empire or oil, perhaps even more important than military might. The means of producing untold wealth lie just beyond the horizon. The timeless question we carry forward into the new millennium is how better to distribute that wealth around the shrinking planet of the 21st century. Peter Morgan, BBC News in Seattle.
Some cinemas could soon be among England's most protected buildings under proposals put forward by the filmmaker Lord Putnam. English Heritage has backed the plan, recommending that 30 cinemas be listed.
The stories like this one from Pathé in 1945 were usually about a week old by the time they reached the news theatres. In Lyme Regis, the Regent Cinema has been putting on movies since the 30s.
English Heritage have said it's of national importance, and Lyme Regis is a very small town with a very small population, but it is really nice that it's come to us here.
Many of Britain's historic cinemas have only survived the threat of television and the multiplexes by becoming bingo halls. This, the Granada in Tooting in South London, is considered the finest picture palace in Britain with its Gothic decor. It was listed back in the 1970s along with some 120 other cinemas, but English Heritage wants to upgrade it to make it the first Grade 1 listed cinema in the country. They think another 30 throughout England need protection from demolition. This morning at the Edwardian Electric Cinema in Notting Hill, a campaign was launched to get people to tell them if there are any more they've missed.
People are very, very passionate about their local cinemas. They remember wonderful early days. And I'm sure they know some cinemas that we haven't been able to find.
So if you think you've got a cinema near you that English Heritage should know about, you need to get in touch with them by March. After that, the Culture Secretary, Chris Smith, will make the final decision on whether or not he thinks it should be listed.
Just time to bring you a quick reminder of our main stories. The flow of refugees from the Chechen capital Grozny has increased following Russia's threat to leave by Saturday or die. There's been growing international condemnation of Russia's actions. The two Libyans accused of murdering 270 people by blowing up a Pan Am plane over Lockerbie have made their first public appearance at a Scottish court sitting in the Netherlands. The men are also accused of conspiracy to murder, a charge their lawyers want dropped before the trial itself opens in February. Those were the headlines. Let's take a look at the weather. Here's Dan Corbett.
Hello there. Well, even on Monday, some of us actually saw some sunshine, and we still managed our rain in a few spots. Take, for instance, Glasgow. You've probably had enough already, but 3/4 of an inch was actually measured here, and believe it or not, this will seem like almost a drop in the bucket compared to what some of us could see, in fact, for the day-to-day as far as rain's concerned. All down to a troublemaker of sorts. He sat out to the west for Monday. We just had a westerly flow and some specular showers with the first area of low pressure yesterday, but today as this troublemaker comes sliding across the British Isles, fair bit of wind, fair bit of rain, and definitely a day for the Brolly, the Mac, and perhaps even the wellies as well. But maybe right early, please take some care on the roads if you are. Heavy rain and gales starting to take shape across the British Isles, initially across western and northern parts, making the driving a bit on the tricky side. Wind gusts to perhaps as high as 60, maybe 70 miles an hour. And for spots that have already seen a fair bit of rain over the past few days, flooding easily, again, could be a problem in some spots. But here's the troublemaker. Area of low pressure spreading in its rain for the early part of the morning, coming in across parts of Northern Ireland, west parts of Scotland. You see those yellows and greens? Those are some of the heavier downpours, and also a fair bit of wind with this troublemaker as it comes sliding in as well. Here's how the numbers start for the course of the day. Perhaps 1s, 2s, maybe a touch of frost early on across parts of eastern Scotland. Further south, 7s to mild 9s as we start the day. But here's how the rain looks for that morning drive across parts of Scotland, through really northern England, down to the southwest early on. And notice, let's say in Norwich and perhaps Aberdeen, you're going to start off dry, and it's probably not till the later parts of the day, into the afternoon, that you see the rains coming through here. And back behind the main band of steady rain, then we start seeing the showers peppering their way in. And some of these showers could actually be on the heavy side as well, so again, perhaps take some care in the car if you're out and about. Temperature-wise, nothing to brag about. The blanket of cloud and the winds, even though they are from that southwest direction. 8s to 9s in parts of Scotland, perhaps an 8 as well for Northern Ireland. Further south, we might see 10s, maybe an 11 across the south. And always remember that wind, quite a swift wind, with many areas seeing those gales right through the course of the day. Looking at things for football fans, bit of good news, yes, Man United, they are playing, in fact, for the league match going on versus Valencia later on this evening. Weather for that, yes, you guessed it. Take the wet weather gear if you are going. Good luck to your favourite team. Wet weather with a fairly stiff southwest wind. Dig back to the weather book this day. Well, at least it's not snowing. We had quite a severe snowstorm, in fact, across parts of the British Isles this day, way back in 1990. Quick peek of things for the day on Thursday. Leftover showers as the low pressure comes through and temperatures a bit cooler. That's the weather for now.
Violence is escalating. Nowhere can be considered safe.
With over 250 correspondents, 2,000 journalists and 50 bureaus worldwide.
A campaign of intimidation to keep people from the polls has failed spectacularly.
Keeping up with the world is easy. With Correspondent, today at 2:30 on BBC News 24.
If it's a failure, we will never be forgiven.
From conception
Let us get behind Greenwich and the Millennium Experience.
to creation.
If I make it, fine. If I don't, worst thing they can do is kill me.
Exclusive access into Britain's most controversial project.
Going to be great.
So much struggle,
Everyone says you'll never do it,
so little time.
and they've all been proved wrong.
The Dome, Trouble at the Big Top, tomorrow, 9:30 on BBC Two.
Here's to tomorrow.
Refugees are continuing to flee Chechnya ahead of Saturday's deadline as the West ponders what steps to take against Russia. Israel has announced it will not build any new Jewish settlements while peace talks continue with the Palestinians. The two Libyans accused of the Lockerbie bombing have made their first appearance in a court in the Netherlands. Hello, this is BBC News. I'm Janet Barry. There's growing international concern over Russia's ultimatum to people in the Chechen capital Grozny to leave by Saturday or face intensified bombardment. The United Nations Refugee Agency has expressed alarm, and both Britain and France have joined Washington in condemning the threat. But there appears to be little appetite for anything more than the limited withdrawal of economic aid. Moscow has brushed off the criticism, saying the West should be more concerned with putting pressure on what it calls Chechen rebels. It's not known exactly how many refugees have left Chechnya since the fighting started or where they are. But the bulk, at least 230,000, are thought to have fled to Ingushetia. Several thousand have also crossed into Georgia, and thousands more have moved north and south into Dagestan. It's estimated that as many as 40,000 civilians are still trapped in the capital, Grozny.
This is the pitiful exodus from Grozny. Only a handful have been able to flee. Few have the strength, the money or the means to go. This group escaped Moscow's death threat. Russian troops in the town of Achkoy-Martan let them through. They are now safe, but so many others are trapped in the city, terrified and defenseless. It's like what happened in Yugoslavia, Vacha said. Then the world was up in arms, but no one cares about Chechnya. Everyone is asleep. It must seem that way to those on the receiving end of this. Russian troops are firing wave after wave of rockets at targets near Grozny. On Saturday, things may get much worse. The Kremlin said civilians could leave after Saturday's deadline. That sounds like a concession to the outside world, but it does not amount to lifting Moscow's death sentence on Grozny. Inside the doomed city, the streets are all but deserted. Many may not even know yet about Russia's ultimatum because they dare not venture out. It would take a miracle to get the old, the sick and the wounded away. Still, Moscow says, leave or die. At the border today, frantic refugees were asking for news of their loved ones in Grozny. Russia's safe corridor from the city does not lead here. Still, many waited for hours, hoping against hope. Zarima was searching among the new arrivals for anyone who knew her mother and brother. Like many others, they had been too afraid to flee. Now she was worried it was too late. But no one could ease her fears. They hadn't been seen. With every hour that passes, Zarima's torment grows. She's terrified that her family's days are numbered.
I'm helpless. I would go there and get them if I could, but the road is closed. I'm very afraid. All I can do is wait until they appear, but I don't know if they ever will.
Many others are keeping a vigil here, counting down the days and the minutes to the horror Moscow has planned for Saturday. The wait here is now even more desperate and fruitless. There is little or no chance that anyone from Grozny will make it through, but they have only a few days in which to try to escape, and their relatives don't want to give up hope. Orla Guerin, BBC News, at the Chechnya border.
Despite the fact that the International Monetary Fund and the EU are delaying more economic aid to Russia, the United States has said it will not reduce aid to the country. Our Washington correspondent Stephen Sacker said US officials believed that aid programs were essential for American national security.
For the time being, the Americans see no real use in ending bilateral relations, economic relations between the United States and Russia. In particular, they point out that most of the aid that is given to Russia on a bilateral basis at the moment from Washington is aimed at safeguarding the Russian nuclear program, is aimed, for example, at stopping defections of Russian nuclear scientists, and there will be no point in America withdrawing that kind of aid. So I think it's true to say the Americans are somewhat caught here. They want to express condemnation and show their lack of support for what the Russians are doing. The question is, practically, how do they express that the feeling they have?
The Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak has said he will not launch new housing projects in Jewish settlements after the Palestinians warned that they would wreck their current peace talks. Mr. Barak made the announcement shortly before the American Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, arrived on the latest leg of her Middle East tour.
Under construction, some of the 10,000 Israeli homes being built in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. For years, a source of annoyance for the Palestinians. The building of Jewish settlements in occupied territories, such as this one at Efrat near Bethlehem, has become one of the most critical issues in the Middle East peace process. The Palestinians have said all the work in the settlements has to stop if negotiations are to proceed. In an effort to find a way out of a potentially damaging impasse, the Israeli Prime Minister has said no new projects will be allowed to begin.
Our positions are very clear. We already said that we will not establish new settlements. We said it in the guidance of this government.
The move won't be welcomed by all, however. At home, Mr. Barak is seen by some as giving in to Palestinian demands. And for the Palestinians, the freeze on new building projects isn't the total halt to construction they want. It comes as Mr. Barak prepares to greet the American Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, on the latest stop in her tour of the Middle East. After talks in Syria, she said she was optimistic about the chances of ending a 3-year stalemate in peace talks between Syria and Israel. And she'll be hoping for progress too between Israel and the Palestinians. But it seems she may get drawn into brokering a solution to the current deadlock.
I assume that the Americans know that the peace talks
are reaching a very crucial moment, and without a total freeze of the settlement activities in the West Bank and the implementation of all the items of the interim period, maybe the whole process will be in danger.
A total freeze on construction is unlikely, but with less than 3 months to go before the two sides are due to reach a preliminary framework agreement for peace, concessions are almost certainly needed from both sides. Yvette Austin, BBC News.
The UK correspondent of Israel Radio, Jerry Lewis, says Mr Barak's announcement of a freeze on settlement building was not a sweeping concession.
You've got to divide the things into two different groups. One of the towns around Jerusalem, which are going to be allowed to have natural growth. There's not going to be any change there at all. What Barak has said is that the smaller outlying areas, such as hilltops where there are caravans and the like, they're going to be stopped. They're not going to be allowed to expand, and they will eventually be removed.
When there's been so much compromise since Mr Barak came to power, so much compromise made already, why is it that Israel is still forging ahead with these settlements when it's obviously upsetting the Palestinians so much?
It's not a matter of upsetting the Palestinians, it's not a matter of forging ahead. Israel has a policy. The areas were being subject to having population growth. Barak has said, right, we will limit the population growth. We're not giving back all the settlements, it's not part of the arrangement. We're not giving back some of the towns, for example. What has happened in the last few days, unfortunately, is a dose of posturing by the Palestinians. They've had internal dissension, a lot of anti-Arafat feeling in the last few days. They're trying to switch the spotlight away from the internal problems to the Israeli scene, and this has come about. They've tried to suggest, let's stop negotiations. Negotiations are going to go ahead. They want their 5% land, which they've been promised. They want a prisoner exchange in the next few days. All these things will be put on hold if they start playing games like this.
Okay, you say posturing on the Palestinian side. I'm sure Palestinians are saying there was a fair amount of posturing on the other side too. That aside, how do you resolve this issue before this deadline of February when some sort of preliminary agreement should be reached?
Well, anybody who lives in the Middle East will know that it's arguing in literally a market type situation, and we're not used to it necessarily in Europe and in other parts of the world. There they literally do bargain, they barter with each other. It's very fortuitous that Madeleine Albright's going to be in the region. She will try and knock some heads together, but that's not her main role. Her main role is, in fact, to see the next stage. There's Syria coming up. There's a strong possibility of talks with Syria, and hopefully that will bring about the changed atmosphere which will help for the peace process.
Jerry Lewis of Israel Radio speaking to me a little earlier. The ousted Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif is due to make another court appearance in Karachi. It's expected that he'll hear the former legal charges which are being brought against him. Mr Sharif and 6 others have been accused of a criminal conspiracy to prevent the military ruler General Pervez Musharraf's plane from landing in Karachi in October when it was said to be low on fuel. Nawaz Sharif is being investigated for attempted murder, criminal conspiracy and hijacking. He's consistently denied any wrongdoing. Seattle's police chief Norm Stamper has resigned over his handling of the riots surrounding last week's meeting of the World Trade Organization. Chief Stamper had been harshly criticized for his handling of the demonstrations. On resigning, he revealed they nearly caused President Clinton to cancel his visit to the city. Seattle's mayor said he would try to talk the chief out of leaving. The German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder has been re-elected as chairman of his governing Social Democrats. He took 86% of the votes, no doubt helped by the fact he ran unopposed. Herr Schröder needed a strong mandate to unite the party after a series of losses in state elections this year, and yet more crucial state ballots facing the party next year. Well, 11 years after Pan Am Flight 103 blew up over Lockerbie, the 2 Libyan men accused of the crime have appeared in a Scottish court sitting in the Netherlands. In a pre-trial hearing, they've asked to have one of the charges against them dropped. The judge will make his decision later.
It may not have looked like a moment of history, but this was the first time that the ordinary courts of one country had ever sat in the territory of another. Everyone arriving at Camp Zeiss this morning had to drive through the Netherlands. But once they were past Scottish security, lawyers and reporters found themselves in a little piece of Scotland in the woods outside Utrecht. The court building won't be ready till next year, so the hearing took place in a converted sports hall. In court, Abdul Basit Ali Mohammed Al-Magrahi and Alamin Khalifa Fahima looked relaxed as they sat behind heavy glass screens. Their lawyers told the judge, Lord Sutherland, that a Scottish court couldn't try them for conspiracy to murder because there was no plot on Scottish soil. But the prosecution said the conspiracy had continued until a Pan Am jet exploded over Lockerbie, killing 270 people within the jurisdiction of the Scottish courts. Lord Sutherland is considering the arguments overnight. He may well be ready to give his judgment in the morning. Even if he does throw out the conspiracy charge, the two Libyans are still facing charges of murder and destroying an aircraft. If they're found guilty on either of those charges, that would be enough to put them in prison for the rest of their lives. But the defence have asked for more time to deal with new evidence. The trial itself may now not begin before the spring. Joshua Rosenberg, BBC News, at Camp Zeist in the Netherlands.
Congolese rebels have agreed to allow food supplies through to hundreds of Zimbabwean troops who've been trapped for several months behind rebel lines in the northwest of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The agreement was reached in talks in the Rwandan capital Kigali. In return, government forces in the Congo agreed to withdraw from the town of Bokungu, which they took from rebels last week, while attempting to relieve the Zimbabweans who are supporting the Congolese government. It's being seen by some as a rare breakthrough in a peace process which has not shown much success. A Dutch student has opened fire with a handgun in a school, wounding a teacher and 3 other pupils. The attack took place south of Amsterdam. One pupil is reported to be in a serious condition.
An American nightmare comes to rural Holland. The 17-year-old began firing in the hallway of the school and the computer room. A teacher and 3 other students were hit. They were taken to nearby hospitals. Police forensic teams are now investigating the scene for evidence.
The
brother of the girl started shooting because one of them, had a thing going on with the girl. Well, we heard something was going on. It was chaos. We heard shots. We went for look. Everyone was running. Everyone came outside. They were really upset. The police came quickly, within about 5 minutes.
The teenager has turned himself in. Holland, like much of Europe, has tight gun control, and police will want to find out how he got hold of a weapon. Raphael Jezeram, BBC News.
The Romanian government has passed a law allowing the public access to files kept by the Securitate, the former secret police. The Securitate were disbanded after the successful revolution in 1989 against the rule of the former communist leader Nicolae Ceausescu. President Emil Constantinescu says he hopes the new law will help to put a stop to the blackmailing of public figures popularly suspected of having collaborated with the Securitate.
Fear of the authorities was an everyday concern for Romanians in the days of communist rule. Under communism, 1 in 4 adults is believed to have collaborated with the notorious Securitate, or secret police, which was disbanded during 1989's popular revolt. The former dictator Nicolae Ceausescu presided over a reign of terror in which the dreaded Securitate were his enforcers. In 1989, the people rose up against his authoritarian rule. Ceausescu was overthrown and eventually executed after a violent revolt. The new administration wasted little time in disbanding the Securitate. Its legacy still remains, however. Many Romanian politicians and public figures have been blackmailed on account of their alleged collaboration with the force. In allowing the people access to the Securitate's secret files, the Romanian government is seeking to put the dark days of Ceausescu's rule behind them. Rumours that current politicians would be revealed as informers have so far made the authorities reluctant to allow access to the estimated 125 million files. This new open policy is likely to provide the Romanian government and people alike with some uncomfortable truth to confront. Jim O'Farrell, BBC News.
This is BBC News, a reminder of the headlines. There's growing international concern over Russia's ultimatum to people in the Chechen capital Grozny to leave by Saturday or face intensified bombardment. The United Nations Refugee Agency has expressed alarm, and both Britain and France have joined Washington in condemning the threat. The Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak says his government will not launch new Jewish housing projects until a final peace deal is reached with the Palestinians. And coming up on the programme, the world's most expensive bowl of fruit, a still life by Cézanne, fetches $29 million. But first, with all the business news, here's Richard Quest in New York.
Hello, the latest figures on American productivity show the best performance in 7 years. Productivity continued to steam ahead while wage costs remained under control. That all suggests a very buoyant economy for several months to come. The Dow Jones Industrials took it all in its stride. The market, which has seen some very good gains in recent weeks, decided to turn down, and the Dow was off more than 118 points. The Nasdaq Composite, proving that this is indeed a tale of two markets, was up by around 40, and the Nasdaq closed at a record. The economic condition of developing countries continues to suffer from the Asian financial crisis, even as those countries involved pull themselves out of recession. Donor nations are not giving as much money as they used to, according to the latest study from the World Bank.
Between 93 and 96, for example, there were large reductions in the incidence of poverty throughout East Asia. We estimate that since 1996, there's been very little decline and an increase in poverty in several of the crisis countries.
Finally, the internet and the elevator. It had to come, and now Otis is planning to make an elevator that will offer you internet services and information.
If these are 5 to 6 to 7 seconds increments, you would want that. You would want to know that the Triborough Bridge is closed tonight when you leave this building. You would want to know that there's snowfall outside when you leave this building. You would want to know what the score of the ball game was last night. I think you would want to know that. And it's not obtrusive. If you don't want to look at it, you don't look at it.
It'd have to be a very tall building for most people to have time to check their email. And that's the BBC Business News from New York.
And that was Richard Quest. The former British Conservative MP Neil Hamilton has given evidence for the first time in his libel case against the Harrods owner Mohammed Al Fayed. He said allegations that he took cash for asking questions in Parliament were outrageous lies.
Mohammed Al Fayed was back for the first time since his 5 days in the witness box. He was in court to hear his opponent describe the allegations he'd made of corruption as a pack of lies. On his first day of evidence, Neil Hamilton said it was completely untrue that he'd taken cash, gift vouchers and free shopping at Harrods for asking parliamentary questions on Mr. Al Fayed's behalf.
The true story begins to unfold. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hamilton told the court he'd found it virtually impossible to find work since he lost his safe Conservative seat soon after the allegations were publicised. They were made in a Channel 4 documentary, part of which was shown to the jury. Mr. Hamilton said he and his wife were devastated by Mr. Al Fayed's claims in the programme. He was asked what he felt about Mr. Al Fayed's evidence in this case that Mr. Hamilton had corruptly taken payments. It makes me extremely angry, he said, but it's also a huge blow to one's self-esteem to know that all this garbage is being repeated in this court and day after day in all the newspapers. The Hamiltons have been described as greedy over a 6-day stay at Mr. Al Fayed's Ritz Hotel in Paris. They ran up a bill of more than £2,000 in extras at the owner's expense. But Mr. Hamilton said food and drink was part and parcel of Mr. Al Fayed's invitation. Jane Peel, BBC News, the High Court.
The father of Caroline Dickinson, the schoolgirl murdered in Brittany more than 3 years ago, has gone to France to hear details of a new suspect who may have been involved in her death. Caroline was raped and killed in a hostel in 1996. The former British Prime Minister, Baroness Thatcher, has launched an attack on plans for closer European integration on defence. Speaking in New York, she said the moves were driven by a desire to create a European superstate and warned that they posed a threat to NATO. France says it will decide within the next 48 hours whether it intends to maintain its embargo on British beef imports. The French Food Safety Agency said on Monday that it would leave it up to the government to decide what to do. France faces sanctions by the European Commission if it continues to impose the ban beyond Thursday. Sweden is expected to approve plans this week to reform its licensing laws. The changes will allow the sale of alcohol on Saturdays for the first time in 18 years. Currently, the sale of booze over the weekend is banned in an effort to control drink-related crime.
Sweden's image internationally is one of a liberal, free-thinking society, but the country has some of the world's tightest rules on the sale of alcohol. Swedes are able to buy a drink in a pub or bar any day of the week, But if they want to buy a bottle of wine or pack of beer to take home, it's a different story. The sale of alcohol is limited to state-controlled shops in an effort to discourage excessive drinking on the grounds of health. For the past 18 years, the stores have shut at 7 on Friday evening and remained closed until Monday morning, leading to the inevitable Friday night queue to buy drink. The law was introduced in an effort to cut drink-related crime and violence, but as discontent over the policy rises, so too does the level of illegal alcohol sales. Smuggled drink and home-brewed spirits are estimated to account for nearly a third of all consumption. Reluctantly, the government has now decided to relax the laws. It's allowing a trial of Saturday opening hours in certain areas of the country, the social effects of which will be evaluated in 12 months' time.
The opening is only in part about half of Sweden, and so there is an experiment area and a control area. So we'll compare the development in the experiment area compared to the control area with respect to a number of indicators. The most important of these indicators are domestic violence, public drunkenness, and drunk driving.
The decision's being welcomed by most Swedes, no doubt keen to see an end to the ritual Friday night queues. Hannah Freeman, BBC News.
A Cézanne masterpiece stolen 20 years ago and recovered earlier this year has fetched more than $29 million or £80 million at a London auction. Also under the hammer were 25 Picassos, once owned by the murdered fashion designer Gianni Versace.
21 years after it was stolen, Cézanne's highly prized Bouloir et Fruits, or pewter, pitcher and fruit, proved an irresistible draw at auction. The painting was completed in the late 1880s when Cézanne was at the peak of his impressionist career. His distinctive brushwork characterizing the still lifes for which he is best known. It was stolen during a robbery from a private collection in Massachusetts and only recovered after police swooped on an undisclosed location last month. Sotheby's describes the Cézanne as one of the most important paintings offered in London this decade. But tonight's auction is as much about murder, mystery and intrigue, with the sale of 25 Picassos, which belonged to the extravagant fashion designer Gianni Versace, who was shot dead 2 years ago.
At £80,000, all down at 80, I'm selling for £80,000.
Among the Picassos that went under the hammer were 20 drawings dating from 1902 to the 1960s. Collectors from around the world packed the auction room. Sotheby's had never seen anything like it. Picasso's standing nude drawing set the bidding pace at a mere £200,000. A portrait of Picasso's daughter Maya, who's said to have evoked intense paternal feelings by the artist, more than matched its asking price.
$3 million.
Then, amid intense excitement, came the star of the show, Lot 31, Cézanne's still life, which, say the connoisseurs, captures the true genius of the artist.
John McIntyre reporting there. Well, the draw for the 2002 World Cup finals has been made in Tokyo. Nearly 200 teams entered the hat, and qualifying for the 17th finals begins early in the new year.
All the usual pomp and ceremony was in evidence as the long-awaited qualifying draw for the 2002 World Cup finals, to be hosted by Korea and Japan, was made in Tokyo. And it was a chance for the Japanese to show off some of the facilities that will hold the first World Cup competition in the new millennium, and the first to be held in Asia. 29 nations will be vying to join Japan and Korea as hosts, and France as World Cup holders for the group of 32 countries who will finally battle it out. And footballing dignitaries from past glory days were on hand, as a record 195 teams were drawn for the qualifying round. The main highlights of the draw were the teams from Europe, with the prospect of England meeting old rivals Germany in Group 9, delivering a mouth-watering prospect.
It's just one of those matches, you know, that sort of hits the imagination, and there's so much history in the Germany-England fixture, with events that have happened in previous World Cups and European Championships, etc., that, you know, it probably was the highlight of the whole draw.
The qualification matches don't start until after Euro 2000, with the finals themselves in the summer of 2002. But first, there's a long road ahead. Darren Jordan, BBC News.
A reminder now of our main stories. There's growing international concern over Russia's ultimatum to people in the Chechen capital Grozny to leave by Saturday or face intensified bombardment. This is BBC News.
though we did have some showers on Monday, it's going to seem like a picnic compared to what we're going to see for today. In fact, deep area of low pressure sitting to our west for the day on Monday will slide his way across and give us a fair bit of wind, a fair bit of rain, and not the best day for being to the outside. In fact, please even take some care on the roads. But through the early morning hours, maybe right early in fact, heavy rain and gales beginning to affect the northern and western parts of the British Isles, most likely the northern areas, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland early on, with easily some wind gusts to 60, even 70 miles an hour, and with the rain could easily lead to some flooding through the course of the day in many of those spots that already have seen a fair bit of rain. Here's how we start. There's the area of low pressure spreading in its band of rain. The yellows and the greens, those are the heavier downpours coming in across Northern Ireland, coming into west parts of Scotland, and as well a fair bit of wind with this. The gales already taking force for that morning drive across parts of Northern Ireland, west parts of Scotland. So we start the day with the numbers ranging from perhaps a slightly chilly 1 across the east parts of Scotland. May see a touch of frost here, and you might even as well maybe see the odd slick spot early on across the east parts of Scotland. Further south, the numbers 3s, 4s, maybe even a fairly mild 9, but those winds picking up as well. We see through the course of the day the band of rain early on right about here, not quite to East Anglia, not quite to northeast parts of Scotland, but as we go through the course of the afternoon, rain sliding all the way through, and then we're left with the speckly showers wrapping in behind it, and still those strong winds. If anything, the winds starting to shift in direction, more of a westerly perhaps by the later parts of the day. Finishing numbers look like this, in fact, seeing numbers 8s, maybe 9s across parts of Scotland. Further south, could see a 10. Our prize winner for top temperature, maybe about 11 across the south coast. And always remember those winds, hold on to your hats, with some strong gales in many areas, and still easily those gusts to 50, 60, and even 70 miles an hour. That's the weather for now.
Keeping up with the world is easy. With Correspondent, next on BBC News 24.
You attacked people?
Yes, attacked people.
Did you kill people?
And then you win the election. Not in a sense.
Was it murder or wasn't it?
They're all related.
Was it murder?
I mean, if you've got something to say, come forward and say it.
The biggest killer of the street children is not the violence and the bullets, it's indifference.
As a Christian, I believe the Bible is the Word of God.
But where's tolerance here? What is it about you and doctors?
I don't know. I mean, I like the rubber.
Hard Talk, today at 3:30 on BBC News 24.
The Battle of Britain is about to begin. 1940, the Nazis launched the greatest aerial offensive ever seen.
So the Germans came again, so we fought them again. No question.
Nothing romantic about it. It's a job of work. If you don't do it well, you're dead.
The bravest people were the ones who were terrified.
Finest Hour continues tonight, 9:30 on BBC One.
Good morning, this is BBC News 24. I'm Janet Barry. The main news at 2:30. The flow of refugees from the Chechen capital Grozny has increased following Russia's threat to leave by Saturday or die. 230,000 people have already fled westward to neighbouring Ingushetia to escape the continuing Russian bombardment. It's thought between 30 and 40,000 are still sheltering in Grozny. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees says most of those remaining are old, sick or have young children and either can't leave or have nowhere else to go. The two Libyans accused of murdering 270 people by blowing up a Pan Am plane over Lockerbie have made their first public appearance at a Scottish court sitting in the Netherlands. The men are also accused of conspiracy to murder, a charge their lawyer once dropped before the trial itself opens in February. An internet version of the telephone advice line NHS Direct has been launched by the Prime Minister. The site will give patients access to medical advice via computer. NHS Direct is also being extended to cover 2/3 of England. The nurse-staffed helpline currently operates in 40% of the country. 2 British soldiers with the International Peacekeeping Force in Bosnia have been killed in an accident after their vehicles slipped off an icy road. The accident happens near the western town of Mirkonjitsgrad. 101 soldiers have died since the NATO-led troops were deployed in 1995. Former Tory MP Neil Hamilton has given evidence for the first time in his libel case against the Harrods owner Mohammed Al-Fayed. He dismissed as a pack of lies the allegation that he took cash in return for asking questions in the Commons. Mr Hamilton told the court that he'd found it almost impossible to find work after the claims were publicised. Dr Harold Shipman is accused of murdering 15 of his patients, has acknowledged that one of his alleged victims received a fatal dose of diamorphine while she was at his surgery although he denied he was responsible. Dr. Shipman was being cross-examined about the death of 63-year-old Ivy Lomas. He denies killing Mrs. Lomas and 14 other female patients. A student has shot a teacher and 3 other people at a school in the Netherlands. The shooting happened in the town of Vechel, about 60 miles south of Amsterdam. A young man gave himself up to the police. Well, that's the latest news at 2:32. There'll be a full bulletin on the hour. 24, it's time for Correspondents.
This is a story about property and power, about the battle for control of the Russian economy and the Russian state itself. Deep in Siberia, 2 rivals are locked in combat. A general fighting to restore the power of the state, and a flamboyant tycoon, a former boxer who's on the run from the law. After a decade of turmoil, Russia's past is on trial and its future at stake. Ten years ago, Anatoly Bykov was a nobody, a young boxer in a one-horse town in the depths of Siberia. An unremarkable career as a gym teacher beckoned. In the early 90s, Bykov and his friends realized there was better money to be made outside the boxing ring.
After I graduated, I went to live in a small town where I taught sports and self-defense. But I soon got itchy feet. I wanted a bigger challenge. Then privatization started and the market economy arrived in Russia. I knew I was in the wrong place, that I could achieve more.
Siberia might not look like the obvious place to make a fortune. But although the old Soviet economy lay in ruins, there were plenty of opportunities for an ambitious entrepreneur. The Krasnoyarsk region is a vast chunk of territory, 10 times the size of Great Britain. It's Russia's treasure chest, packed with natural resources, timber, oil, and some of the richest mineral deposits in the world. Three and a half thousand kilometers east of Moscow, the city of Krasnoyarsk sits close to the Chinese border. From there, the giant Yenisei River runs up to the Arctic and the nickel mines of Norilsk. The biggest jewel here is the Krasnoyarsk aluminium smelter, the second largest in the world. In a country littered with aging, unprofitable enterprises, Kras, as it's known, is a fabulously lucrative exception, $1 billion a year business. In keeping with the Russian government's reform program, the state-owned factory was privatized in 1992. Shares or vouchers were issued to the workers. Immediately, a frantic competition started between rival groups trying to amass as many vouchers as possible. Anatoly Bykov and his friends seized their chance.
My partner and I started buying vouchers and shares from the workers. They were selling them off cheap.
We bought
20% of the factory, 10 for him, 10 for me.
The struggle for control of Kras has become something of a modern Russian legend, a a vicious tug-of-war for one of the country's most profitable companies. Politicians, businessmen, gangsters, everyone wanted their share.
This wasn't just about privatization. Whole spheres of influence were being carved out. In Moscow, in Siberia and other regions, everything was being divided up.
Property and power. Once it had all belonged to the state. Suddenly it was there for the taking. According to the Russian police, the lucrative aluminium industry was fought over more violently than any other. How many died in Krasnoyarsk? To this day, no one knows for sure. But Anatoly Bykov emerged victorious. In the city's main cemetery, the losers lie in their dozens. This gravestone belongs to one of Bykov's early rivals, a gang leader called Viktor Lyapnikov. No one in this corner of the cemetery died of natural causes.
People in Krasnoyarsk like to boast that their city has become a gangster-free zone. All the big mafia bosses are dead and buried. As for Anatoly Bykov, well, he's planned ahead. He's reserved this entire plot, especially for him and his partners.
By 1997, Bykov had established himself as the undisputed king of Kras, chairman of the board of directors. Control of the region's wealthiest factory gave him huge political clout. He modernized the plant, became a local councillor and a pillar of the new establishment. The boxer had come a long way fast.
I'm generally reckoned to be worth $400 or $500 million. That's the value of the factories and companies that I manage.
And yet the gangster image won't wash off. Gangster or no gangster, Bykov was the product of a revolution plotted and executed by a group of young government economists who gathered at a cottage outside Moscow back in 1991. The Soviet Union was collapsing. The economy was heading in the same direction. The men devised a radical plan, the rapid transfer of practically the entire state economy into private hands. What they implemented was nothing less than the sale of the century, the biggest privatization program in history. Vouchers were distributed to a bewildered population, entitling every worker to a share of the state's property. In all, a staggering 120,000 businesses were sold off. But in the chaos, many firms fell into the wrong hands. It was at this point that General Alexander Lebed stormed onto the political stage. A scowling bear of a man, Lebed's exploits in Afghanistan and elsewhere had turned him into an army legend. Now he wanted to join the political fray. Lebed's hard man image went down well in a country tired of turmoil. For a while, Lebed tried his luck in Moscow, but after a failed run for the presidency, he decided to set up an independent power base elsewhere. And where better than Krasnoyarsk, with its huge economic potential? If he could restore order here, surely the Kremlin would be within his grasp. But first, Lebed needed to get elected as Krasnoyarsk's governor. He turned to the only man who could guarantee victory for him, Anatoly
вступлением в должность губернатора Красноярского края.
Bykov's support had proved decisive, and for a while Lebed showed his gratitude. The boxer and the general formed an unlikely alliance. Each gambled that the other could further his own career. But the marriage did not last long. Within months of the election, it became clear that Krasnoyarsk was simply not big enough for both of them. The real issue dividing the boxer and the general was control over Krasnoyarsk's industrial giants. Bykov's private empire was thriving, but the local government was practically bankrupt.
Mr. Bykov presented me with an ultimatum. He wanted me to give him total and absolute control over the biggest enterprises in Krasnoyarsk. The aluminium factory, the machinery plant, the power station, and the bauxite and coal mines. They're the lifeblood of our local economy. The rest is just scrap. It was then that our tense but civilized relationship ended.
What did you say to him?
I can't repeat that on camera.
Lebed's goal was to tame Bykov, to reassert the power of the state over Russia's new breed of capitalists. The local government had no money to pay pensions or salaries, therefore it had no authority. Men like Bykov had all the cash, and they needed to be taught a lesson. Lebed went on the offensive with a barrage of allegations about asset stripping, money laundering and murder at the aluminium factory.
You can only say it's your factory if you either built it with your own money or bought it. But not when you seize control of the factory by shooting all your competitors and partners.
By shooting them?
He simply shot them.
Is there any proof?
Yes, there is. But it's the prosecutor's job to prove it, not mine.
On his own, Lebed realized he was still no match for Bykov. The local police, he suspected, had been bought off by his rival. The general needed reinforcements. In desperation, he turned to Moscow for help. The decision to ask Moscow for help was not as natural as it might seem. The Russian capital was preoccupied with its own power battles, even more furious than those in Krasnoyarsk. Giant new business empires were emerging, bureaucrats and billionaires carving up the Russian state between them. At the center of the storm was the Kremlin, besieged by rival groups and buffeted by allegations of bribery and money laundering. Luckily for Lebed, though, his prayers were answered. Moscow agreed to send a team of investigators to Krasnoyarsk to check out Bykov's business affairs. The detectives' search took them to Bykov's heavily guarded country mansion. But the